Last year, I spoke about 10 minutes here. Now, most TED Talks are about 18 minutes. So they invited me back this year because I had extra credit. Last year, I talked about the crisis facing capitalism and income inequality. You knew I was serious because I brought charts. This year, I brought even more charts. You see, there's been a narrow-minded focus on corporate profitability. It's come at the expense of employees and communities. It has created an unprecedented wealth gap in the country today between the rich and the poor. And it's made our citizenry angry and it's divided our country. Now, the stock market recently has done a pretty good job of rectifying this by pushing down from the top. But obviously a better way is to elevate and to lift up from the bottom. The best way to do that is by refocusing capitalism around the concept of justness, where socially responsible corporate activity becomes just as important to companies as does making money. So with that idea in mind, we created a couple of years ago a not-for-profit enterprise called Just Capital. And we began working on the Just Index. And this is a list of companies, American ones to begin with, where we're going to rank them according to their justness. Now, the response has been broad-based and enthusiastic. And business leaders in particular are asking, what can I do to make my company more just? And why do they want to know? Because customers want it, their employees will demand it, and ultimately their shareholders will profit from it. So to define justness, we undertook one of the most innovative polls of 43,000 Americans, a perfectly demographically representative sample. And we asked them, what does it mean to be just, for a company to be just? And here's what they told us. The first and most important factor in whether a company's just or not is, does it pay its workers fairly? Does it provide them in particular a living wage? Just like in election, pocketbook issues tend to dominate. But just as important as fair pay was, so too was, how does a company make its workers feel? Does it care about their job satisfaction? Does it treat them as individuals with respect? Does it promote fair hiring practices and treatment? Now, 8 other factors that came out time and time again, we heard it over and over and over, were first, do they make safe and reliable products? Do they protect employee rights? Are they well governed and generate a profit? Do they minimize their environmental impact? Do they make safe and reliable products that have value and satisfy customers? Do they play a positive role in the community? Do they behave ethically and honestly? And do they create jobs domestically? Now, we're polling as we speak. We're going to update those preferences. And this summer, for the first time, as we will every summer going forward, we're going to take those preferences and we're going to rank America's 1,000 largest companies from 1 to 1,000 according to those metrics, according to the public's definition of justness. And this September, we'll publish those findings and we'll highlight the 100 most just company according to those metrics and call it the Just 100. And we'll also identify the number 1 company in each of 32 major industry sectors, and we'll call them America's Most Just. And any company that's on either of those lists, the Just 100 or America's Most Just, well, those companies will be able to affix this logo, the Just 100 or America's Most Just, on their products. Think of that as a badge of goodness. Employees will look at that as an emblem they want to wear. Shareholders will look at it as a signpost, and it'll emit a clarion call to consumers that this is one of the most just companies in the whole corporate universe. Now, if just a few of us begin to alter our behavior, while the results, if just a few of us begin to think about what we buy, where we invest, where we work, well, again, the results could be ginormous. And I say that because our individual choices can have huge collective power. The private sector is $15 trillion. If we move just 1% of corporate spending, 1% of consumer spending, 1% of investor holdings, that will have a $600 billion annual impact towards companies that are doing more good. This is a 1% that anyone can join. And it's not defined by how much money you amass. It's defined by the benevolence of your actions. Thank you.
Second, while they prepare the performance on the carpet, let's just move over here.
Okay.
Because I think everybody has a question, and it is, you don't have an index yet, but you have criteria and factors, and you've been thinking about this for a couple of years. How has this already influenced your investments, if it has?
Well, I think the most interesting anecdote is about a year ago, the co-chair of my company said, you know, if you're going to be out front on this concept of corporate justice, we better look at our own company. We're a private company, 500 employees. So we start with the number one factor. How do we pay our employees? And we're a financial money management company, so our lowest employee in Greenwich, Connecticut was making $55,000. And so I thought, this is fantastic. We're made in the shade. And then I thought, you know, one of the guys that does our lawn, his name is Pablo, and I've known the guy for 7 years. I see him out there all the time. I said, there's no way he's making $55,000. And the reality is that our company outsources the facilities as well as the lawn management in our company. And in Greenwich, Connecticut, he was making $10.50 an hour. And boy, when we saw that, I just thought, oh my God. I mean, it was literally one of the most, it was a bad moment because that's not a living wage. And we could clearly have the capability. In fact, we had 16 employees who were in various parts of our facilities because we had outsourced that were getting less than the minimum wage. And I think, you know, one thing that we heard in our polling, supply chain issues are really important to Americans, and or for that matter, to everyone. So I think the supply chain issues for American companies are going to show up in the rankings here.
About 94% of jobs attached to corporate America are naturally not jobs in the companies; they are in the supply chain.
And I was going to say, particularly supply chains offshore or taking advantage of very cheap labor, sometimes, as we know, child labor, et cetera, those are going to be issues, and they're going to factor into that ranking. And I think it'll be good to bring transparency. So again, shareholders, consumers, employees know exactly what type of behavior that company has.
Looking forward to the index. Thank you.